Good evening and welcome to the League of Women Voters Candidates Forum. Tonight we will hear from the three candidates for the Oxnard City Mayor position. I'm David Marin, a member of the League of Women Voters, and what I'd like to ask is if everyone will please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. And at this time, I'm going to introduce Betsy Patterson. She is the president of the League of Women Voters.
Thank you, David. League of Women Voters was founded in 1920, almost 100 years ago, after the passage of the 19th Amendment, which gave women the right to vote. At that time, the suffragists realized that now they had 27 million women who had never had any experience with voting, and so they formed the League of Women Voters to both register voters, but also to educate voters about the candidates and the issues so that they could be informed and vote wisely. The League of Women Voters has always been and continues to be a nonpartisan organization. We neither support or oppose any candidates or any political parties. Our mission has been to educate voters, and we provide both printed and online nonpartisan material on ballot initiatives, as well as providing candidate forums like tonight to allow the voters to have a chance to ask the candidates questions and understand what their positions are. The League of Women Voters also is not just for women. Since 1974, we have opened our membership to men, being one of the first exclusive clubs to open its membership to the opposite sex. Simply stated, our mission is empowering voters and defending democracy. And thank you all for coming tonight for this candidates forum. We hope it's informative and that you feel that you go away with a better understanding of your candidates. Thank you very much.
And to Betsy's point, I am a member of the League of Women Voters and proudly have been for many, many years. So with that, we will begin. I want to thank the City of Oxnard for allowing us to host the forum here. And we are going to have our opening statements from each candidate. Our first candidate is Tim Flynn. He has a timer up front, 1.5 minutes. Everybody's ready? Tim, 1.5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much. I want to first thank the League of Women Voters. I think that word empowerment should be also added to open, honest, and objective forums, and that's very rare in the United States today. My focus as your mayor has been primarily on quality of life issues, not only in the city, but specifically in neighborhoods. I've led the fight on graffiti. Today, Oxnard has a model program of fighting graffiti, not only in Ventura County, but throughout the state of California. Second, I've also led the fight against gang violence in the city of Oxnard, which is absolutely unacceptable. I'm the #1 proponent of the gang injunction. I will see to it that that gang injunction is reinstituted and revised. But most importantly, I advocate an intervention program for every single gang member of the city of Oxnard. Quality of life, however, is much more than eliminating graffiti and violence. It has a lot to do with street paving. I've led the drive for repaving streets with the City Council. In the last year alone, over 100 lane miles have been paved. I've also gotten us a seat at the table at Channel Islands Harbor to revitalize the harbor. And to end, I'll say the following. My job as your mayor is to unite the city, not divide the city with costly, unnecessary lawsuits and special elections. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next candidate is Mario Quintana.
Thank you so much. I want to thank the League of Women Voters for putting this event together. It's a tremendous opportunity for you to get an idea of who we are objectively, and I appreciate that. My name is Mario Quintana. I'm a lifelong resident of this great city. I grew up in La Colonia. I went to public schools here. I can tell you that growing up there gives you a unique perspective as to this community and its needs. When we look at what Oxnard is doing and the trajectory that we're on, we talk about keeping people engaged, community connectedness, community engagement. All those things are factored in to how we've governed over the last 15 years, or most of my life. To be honest with you, to live in a marginalized society or to grow up in a situation where you feel on the outside looking in, the idea is how do we engage the public? How do we get people involved? One of the biggest issues I fought for here in the city was Spanish translation of our city council meetings. As you can see, we have that set up here primarily because of that advocacy. That vote took place in 2011, just before the mayor became the mayor, and he voted against it. So we're talking about reaching out to the community. You look at a community that's 75% Hispanic, you have to consider how many people are Spanish speaking predominantly, and how many can you communicate with if they don't have a clue what you're talking about, if their primary language is Spanish. You have to be able to engage that community. They're too large a community to be ignored, and unfortunately they have been with this leadership.
Thank you. Our next candidate is Aaron Starr.
Yes, I want to thank the League. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters once again for putting on this event, and thanks to all of you for caring enough about Oxnard to be here today. Most of all, I want to thank my wife, who's in the front row. I definitely married up. Thank you, Alicia. Imagine a well-run city with transparent finances. Imagine well-maintained streets. Imagine crime-free neighborhoods. Imagine working with our schools so that our children are taught the skills they need to succeed in the 21st century economy. Imagine attracting businesses that offer high-paying jobs so our children can afford to live here. I'm here to tell you that all of this is achievable. Oxnard has great potential, and we deserve nothing less than to realize that potential. Now, every 2 years you hear promises. Soon after the elections, those promises are forgotten and unfulfilled. Then you hear the same promises 2 years later. Many of you already know me as the controller of a local billion-dollar manufacturing company. You know me as someone who keeps promises, gets things done, and who is an agent of change. I'm here to tell you that we don't have to do things the way we've always done them. And with the answers to the questions that you hear today, you'll have an opportunity to contrast us and decide whether the current leadership has made progress and will help us reach our potential, or if it's time to bring in new leadership. And for one, maybe to follow the laws so that they don't keep losing lawsuits.
Thank you. Our next, thank you. And by the way, I didn't have an opportunity to mention this earlier. At the League, we request that the audience always just holds your applause. I'll give you an opportunity at the very end, and that also includes booing the moderator. Let's hold off on doing that as well. Right? So we'll give you a chance later. Thank you very much. Okay, we are going to begin. Mario, you're up first on our questions, and we have several about this issue, so let's get right to it. What is your thoughts on development? Are you for growth or no growth? What are your positions about growth in the city of Oxnard?
I'm for growth. I think what you're looking at now in this times, we're seeing a housing crisis, and it's pretty tragic when you really look at it, because my opponent, the mayor, is very much against density and growth, and so what that has led to, when you look at the housing crisis, you look at this anti-growth mentality. Unfortunately, what we're seeing is a raise in the cost of living that's having a ripple effect in our economy. It's having a ripple effect in our communities. You're going to see as these cost of living continues to grow, primarily because now we're on an island. When you look at SOAR, you look at the SOAR initiative, we're like New York before it was built. And because of that, it impacts cost of living, it impacts housing, and right now it's strategized to raise the cost of living and to a certain extent possibly gentrify the area. I would argue that's the case. And when you go specifically point to South Oxnard, what's the population there? You have to ask yourself that question, and that's been his primary focus. And I think you have to consider when we're looking at development, you need to be competitive in reality. There needs to be, we talk about a free market, the free market principles, supply and demand, and supply is low, so demand is high. And so that's the justification they've given. But I don't see how you can really justify that when you're not competing with other people that are looking, you're competing with corporations, companies, and there's too many people that fall in that umbrella where they're renting and they can't compete.
Thank you, Mario. I have to stop you there. And up next on that question is Aaron Starr. Do you want me to reread the question?
Yeah, why don't you?
The question is, what are your thoughts on development? Are you for growth or no growth?
I'm neither for nor against growth. The growth will happen in reality. The question is, how well is it managed? You can't say we can't have any growth and have no housing stock, no apartments, because the bottom line is that folks are going to move here one way or another. And what we're witnessing today is folks are moving several families into a house. And when that happens, you've seen what the crowding is like in some of your neighborhoods where it's just a real big parking problem. Well, that's the reason. I know we don't want more people here with all the traffic, but they're coming here regardless of whether we build homes or not. So I think we need to make sure that we manage this well. One important thing is that developers need to pay their own costs. We can't have a situation where we allow a developer to come in and then push all those costs on us in later years. So it needs to be well managed so that they're paying all their costs and that we're not bearing the burden. Any development should help us improve our community. What we really need to do, especially though, is we need to bring in businesses. Businesses will bring in those high-paying jobs, higher-paying jobs than we have now, that will allow us to afford homes so that people don't have to be 2 and 3 or 4 families to a household. That's just unacceptable. It's really hurting our neighborhoods. So that's where I stand. Thank you.
Thank you. And Tim, we'll wrap up with you on your position about growth. For growth, against growth, where do you stand?
Well, the fact of the matter is that growth is a necessity in every community, but it has to be responsible growth. So when I mean responsible growth, it can be argued that in the past, Oxnard hasn't particularly engaged in responsible growth, and specifically urban sprawl. So we've stopped that, thank God, and we are preserving farmland, and that's very, very important. But where are homes and where is development going to take place if we're not going to engage in urban sprawl? It's going to have to occur in the core of this downtown. And so I'm an advocate of mixed-use development. Mixed-use development is a theme in most of the successful downtowns all across this nation. If you've been to San Diego as an example, to the Old Town, or if you've been to Oakland, you've been to many other cities, they engage in smart growth, and that smart growth, again, is a combination of mixed use where you have residential development above commercial development. But I want to end by saying this. We have overcrowding in Oxnard not because there's not an adequate supply of housing. That is an absolute untruth. It's not truthful. It's because the people that 2 and 3 and 4 families living in one home can't afford to live in a coastal area where the prices are higher than their disposable incomes. And so we have to find a way to address that. But I'll end by saying we have an obligation to house our workers, not the rest of the county's workers that they refuse to house.
Thank you. We're going to start the next question. Aaron, you'll be first this time. The question is, with the level of gang violence in Oxnard, do you support the gang injunction as one of the tools to combat gangs? And what are your other solutions to about violence?
Before I start, can I ask that you also reverse direction occasionally, because otherwise the mayor will always speak after me, and I feel like there's no opportunity.
Yeah, no, Aaron, just so you understand it for the audience, thank you for giving me the opportunity. We don't do that here. It's not reverse, it's a random thing. I've got a whole chart here in front of me, and you never know, none of you will know who goes next.
All right, very
as
good.
far as that, so we're on the same page.
So, all right,
So again, the question is, what do you, with the level of gang violence in Oxnard, do you support the gang injunction as one of the tools to combat gangs? What are your other solutions for gangs?
So I don't believe in having group hugs to take care of the gang problem or some sort of strange intervention where we're going to bring them in like an Alcoholics Anonymous type theme. I don't think that works. We have a lot, unfortunately, they're criminals. And we need to have something like the gang injunction. I don't think what we had was good in that it didn't give people the opportunity to get off the gang injunction. There wasn't a real due process, I believe. I think there needs to be a mechanism where people who are going to be put on the gang injunction need to have a very clear opportunity to be told they're going to be put on. So they have an opportunity to basically say, hey, I'm not in a gang, and I can prove it, or at least make it so that the authorities have to prove that they are in a gang. I think that when somebody's on a gang injunction, there needs to be a way to eventually get off that gang injunction, because there are people who are there for a decade or more. and some of them aren't in gangs anymore. So we have to be fair about that. I think the gang injunction is a very important tool. We need something like a gang injunction, but it needs to be modified in such a way that it can pass constitutional muster.
Thank you. Tim, you're up next. What the level of gang violence in Oxnard? Do you support the gang injunction? What are your ideas on how to combat violence?
The level of gang violence in the city of Oxnard is absolutely and completely unacceptable. And I would argue that it doesn't just cost human lives, it costs this city its reputation. Oxnard's reputation is largely defined by gang violence. 2,500 young men who are making terrible choices in their lives are allowed to define, I believe, Ventura County's greatest city. So I'm a strong supporter of the gang injunction. Right now we're reaching out to the public. We're getting input as to whether or not the gang injunction and the way we've applied the gang injunction can be better and more effective. And that's what I'm interested in. I'm interested in the gang injunction becoming more effective. But with that said, what do I mean by intervention? A gang injunction, in essence, the way I look at it, is like the equivalent of a house arrest. And I'd much rather have a gang member subject to the terms of that injunction and not go out and murder someone in cold blood than roaming the streets without any restrictions. They have restrictions because they belong to a criminal organization. But intervention means this: we have to find a way to get them out of gangs, because it's an endless cycle, it's a revolving door, it's a generational problem, and I'm committed with this new city manager, Alex Nguyen, to doing exactly that.
Thank you, and we will wrap up with you, Mario, on this question.
Well, since the beginning, I was against the gang injunction. And I grew up in Colonia. I grew up in the epicenter of where the gangs are coming from. And I can tell you that gangs exist in a vacuum. It's when, he wants a solution for these gangs after the fact. I'm telling you, you're going to pay 10, 20 times as much to do it that way. That's where we're raising so much of our budget goes to police department, primarily because we're focusing after the fact. I can tell you I was saved primarily because initiatives for prevention. Prevention programs are why I'm here today, why I went to college, why I got a degree, why I came back to my community. I serve on the Community Relations Commission, and I continuously get reports from the police department as to how safe we are. I mean, literally, they're cheerleading for themselves, how good they're doing, what a great job they're doing. And to me, it's a catch-22, because what is it? Are you such a safe city? We're one of the safest cities in America for a city our size, yet we still need a gang injunction. To me, it's a tool of suppression. Tools of suppression are not unique. I grew up in La Colonia. Police officers use tools of suppression on people like me, kids who went to go play basketball, baseball, football, to treat us all like trash, to be honest with you. We all grew up with that perception. Be afraid of the police officers. Don't come across them. And then now, as I'm an adult, I'm working with the community, trying to engage these same people, and it's a lost cause, because you lost them at the beginning. We have to commit in the front end, not in the back end.
Thank you. And Mario, we'll start the next question with you. So in Oxnard, there's several question cards here about the homeless situation. So what are your particular ideas about resolving the homeless situation? Do you think the city should assign a police officer? Do you think other measures should be taken?
I can tell you, I work at the Boys and Girls Club. I just left just this last month, and we have a huge homeless problem there. Every day in and day out, we get there, there's homeless there. And, they're sleeping when we're walking into the building. Politely ask them to get up and leave. They're not bad people. Many of them just looking for a place to sleep. I don't see them as, individuals that are intentionally living on the streets. It's just a situation, a circumstance, really. And I think it kind of ties back into the cost of living. We talked about earlier. So you said people want to live on the coast. Well, look at the cost of living. It's skyrocketing. It's outrageous, the cost of living. And you're going to see more homeless people on the streets, primarily because they can't afford this city. And people say move on, but we don't have that kind of control and power over people. People are going to decide what to do. And at the end of the day, I think we're making some inroads. We're looking to commit to a permanent homeless shelter, and it's an epidemic that's statewide as well as it's countrywide. I mean, I think you're seeing this everywhere. Housing is a crisis, and it's going to continue to grow. And what the root is, I'm not too sure. You can't say it's just our city, because it is everywhere. Whether it's drugs or anything, it's up for debate as to why homelessness is on the rise. But we should be a part of the solution. We should be engaged with the County of Ventura, making sure those social services are coming in and help who we can help. Many are not going to be able to be helped. At the end of the day, they're going to choose that lifestyle, and that's something we have to accept.
Thank you. Tim, you're up next. The question is about homeless situation here in Oxnard. Many questions about that. What are your solutions? Do you believe a police officer should be specifically set or assigned for that?
So out of the some 1,800 homeless in Ventura County, 2/3 of those homeless reside in the cities of Oxnard and Ventura. And Oxnard and Ventura have, due to a variety of circumstances, come to the point where we can no longer avoid and just keep kicking the can down the road when it comes to the homeless and addressing the needs that they have. Both cities are going to open a year-round shelter. That year-round shelter will offer a complement of mental health services, job training services, to get them out of their homeless status, get them off the street, and to resolve this crisis once and for all. I have taken an active role as mayor in the location and trying to locate that shelter location because it needs to be compatible with the residents of the city. There's some people who say, put a homeless shelter wherever you can find one and forget the neighborhoods. The neighborhoods to me are number one. The neighborhoods are number one. And so I'm committed to not only resolving this problem, but once and for all, we'll provide a shelter, but that shelter will not be a free lunch. I believe in a hand up, not in a handout. And those individuals that are now residing in parks and the river bottom, they'll be given many options and we want to help them, but there comes a time where you say enough is enough.
Aaron, you're last on this question. What is your position on homelessness?
You know, this is a problem throughout the country and no one seems to actually have a solution. I don't think we're going to have a solution here at this dais. My personal philosophy is that homeless programs should be here to help people who are temporarily homeless. Somebody who actually lives here today for some reason beyond their control, maybe they're because of a spousal abuse situation or their house just burned down. Those are folks that we should be helping. People who don't make choices to be homeless, but who through circumstances beyond their control become homeless. Unfortunately, there's a lot of folks who choose homelessness either as a way of life or because of mental illness or drug problems, that's what they choose. I think the big question for us is, why do they choose to live here on the streets in Oxnard instead of somewhere else? Because they have choices where to stay. Because it's not like they have to sell a home. They come here. And that's a problem for us with their hypodermic needles, the feces they leave around, which has hepatitis A, and people are getting infected with that. It's a real problem. I think that to the extent possible, yes, let's have a police officer assigned to that, but let's also try and get these folks reconnected with their families who often live outside the state and outside the city. Let's do that. Let's focus on the folks that need help who actually do live here or did live here.
Thank you. Tim, we're going to start with you. There's a couple of issues that deal with the City Council that has to make decisions on things like landscape assessment districts. So do you have plans to reimburse, not you personally of course, but I'm sure people would love that, but does the city have plans to reimburse the residents in the landscape assessment districts? And do you believe that River Ridge should continue to rely on Measure O funds? So your views on solving the landscape assessment district issue and River Ridge using Measure O.
So there's no neighborhood in the city that is dependent on Measure O, and that's not just River Ridge, it's no community in the city. And the fact of the matter is that landscaping and the poor condition of landscaping in many parts of the city is a quality of life issue. I mean, no one has to make, no one has to have like a vivid imagination about how much good landscaping does for a city. Take Santa Barbara, take any other city that has really good landscaping, and that's the way it should look in Oxnard. So the bottom line is landscape maintenance districts are supposed to pay for themselves. Those landscape maintenance districts were not managed properly going back decades. We've undone that, and now we've reconstituted those landscape maintenance districts. Those landscape maintenance districts at some point will have a choice in determining their level of service. Will it be an A level of service, a B, or a C? Every one of them will have that choice. And I'll end by saying that last week I brought an issue before the City Council on tree trimming. Ladies and gentlemen, we have 57,000 trees in the city of Oxnard, and we have a 2,700 tree backlog. I made sure that an agenda item was brought to the council last week, that those 2,700 trees right now are on schedule to be trimmed, and that's citywide. It's not just the River Ridge neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Aaron, you're up next on this question. The question again is, do you believe the city should be reimbursing the residents in the landscape assessment districts and River Ridge Golf Club's reliance on Measure O funds?
I always notice that the mayor makes these big, broad announcements about some new program he's doing, and it always happens just before the election, every single time. In the end, we really don't get anything done. The point is, you should be doing the work during the entire 2-year term, not just a month or two just before an election. Now, one thing that I really have a problem with the landscape maintenance districts is just the complete lack of transparency. We have people who, the mayor will not let a report go out. We had an audit, outside consulting firm look at the finances of these landscape maintenance districts, all the misspending. We know the report is bad because the mayor voted to not disclose it. He was the deciding vote to say, nope, we're not going to disclose this landscape maintenance audit to the public and show where the money really went. And I can tell you this, if I become mayor, that's one of the first things I do is I'm voting to release that report to the public. You paid for that report. You deserve to know what's in that report. We shouldn't be hiding bad news from you and coming up with these just broad pronouncements 1 month, 2 months before every election about all these grand schemes that we're doing. That's just not acceptable. As far as Measure O's use for the golf course, I'm not in favor of using Measure O for the golf course. The Measure O was meant for the entire community, not for just a select few people.
Thank you. Mario, same questions to you. Your views on the landscape assessment districts and the use of Measure O funds with the River Ridge Golf Club.
I'll echo Mr. Starr's comments about the transparency and making sure that we know where this money is going. As far as reimbursing, I would look strongly at doing that. I think if you promise someone something for a payment and you don't deliver, you've got to look to making it right. And that's the role of leadership. You take ownership of what's done and what was done or what wasn't done under your management, and you make it right by the members of our community. As far as spending money for River Ridge, or the golf course, Measure O was brought in a lot of ways. When I heard about it in 2008, it was described as recreation, police, so many different things. Could have been anything really. I think the reason why those resources go there is because it's a very affluent community. An affluent community that votes gets, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. So that's the reason why those resources are going to go there, and they're going to continue to go to places like that all over the city of Oxnard. And we've got to work to make sure that everybody has access to those funds as well.
Thank you. Aaron, we'll start the next question with you. As far as the economy, what are your views on how Oxnard should improve its economy, bringing businesses, other things like that? Do you have a particular view of where Oxnard's future lies?
Oh yeah, we have so much potential here. Folks, I want you to think about this. I actually saw a report from the city treasurer comparing business licenses around the county. And what I gleaned from that was that the city of Oxnard has the fewest number of businesses per capita in the county. I mean, just let me put it this way. Thousand Oaks has more businesses than Oxnard. Ventura has more businesses than Oxnard. We're almost twice the size of these two cities. And because we're not allowing these businesses to come here, because frankly, the poor leadership that we have is causing it making it very difficult for businesses to come here. There are businesses that take years to get a permit. Years. I've heard stories of 2-3 different churches that can't get their pavement done without a permit 2 years later. And the fees are just horrendous. We need to bring higher paying jobs into the city. We desperately need higher paying jobs. And this city has failed in creating an environment where we can bring businesses into the city. I will fix that. I'm the controller of a manufacturing company. I understand business. The current leadership at City Hall does not understand business. I will bring higher paying jobs into the city.
Thank you. And Mario, you're up next. What are your views on the economy? What do you see happening in the future? What would you do to improve it?
I think the economy is on an upward swing. I think where the national economy goes, so does most local municipalities as well. And so for the same reason we point the finger as to why we're limiting resources, a lot of it has to do with the economy and what kind of resources are coming back in terms of our tax base. And so, you know, I think when you're looking at development, I think we're ripe for it. I think we're a community that can do a lot of things because we're a coastal city. The question is, you know, are we going to sabotage ourselves? In a lot of ways, you know, we go back to that conversation about the gang injunction. You can't be this luxury city that needs a gang injunction to just keep people at bay. You know, that thing needs to be dissolved. We're branded as a city that needs a gang injunction. To me, that's a loser. That's a loser in a lot of ways. I think we need to move on from that time. I think, you know, for me, gangs, they're going to always exist. The idea is, are we competing for these kids? You know, I also am a president of a local Little League, and, you know, I communicate with a lot of people over the hill, and they're just surprised at the lack of investment in our youth here in Oxnard, especially from the city level, parks and our recreational facilities. There's no commitment on the front end, and so we can do a lot of things with economic, but it's going to start at the roots, and we're going to have to worry about these things that a lot of people don't make that connection between our local economy and our development, but it starts with families, it starts with engaging these communities, getting them involved, because those small businesses in those areas, they're successful. They market to their base, and the idea is to see that for what it is.
Thank you, Mario. Tim, we'll wrap up this question with you. What are your views on the economy? What would you do to help restore Oxnard's or improve Oxnard's economy?
Well, you know, we can talk about business all night long, and, you know, I really question the fact that, you know, the most densely populated city in Ventura County, Oxnard, right, needs more minimum wage jobs. So when we're talking about creation of business and growing this economy, we're finished with minimum wage jobs. That's why you have 2 and 3 families living in a home. We don't need more minimum wage jobs. And to say that Thousand Oaks and Ventura have more jobs, well, if they're minimum wage jobs, we don't need them here. What we need here are higher paying jobs. And in particular, when we talk about the economy, this city, more than any other city in Ventura County, has the potential to attract employers that are going to pay the highest paying salaries. And in particular, I've been the leader here in the city of Oxnard in making Oxnard a fiber city. No, this is not a scheme. A fiber city is what we already have. We already have the infrastructure. So to attract higher paying employers, not minimum wage employers, we can use the fact that we have the infrastructure right now to provide the highest speed internet anywhere in Ventura County, and arguably one of the highest in the state of California, and the infrastructure is already there. Aaron, it's about higher paying jobs, not just jobs.
All right, thank you, Tim. We're going to start the next question with you, Tim. So we have quite a few questions, and I have to tell you right now, I'm not going to have enough time to get to all these questions, but I'm going to try to have you candidates give us a little idea what your views are, top priorities, that type of thing. So let me give you the questions here. If you are elected, what would be the top 2 or 3 issues that you'd work on? How do you propose to fix them? And when we think about that, sort of maybe embellish it by what you feel are your strengths that maybe the other candidates don't have. And if you want to make it a little fun, if you received $1 million for this city, what would you use it on if you had carte blanche to use it any way you want? So tell us your top priorities, your strengths, and what you would do if $1 million came in that you could use any way you wanted.
Who's first?
Sorry, Tim, you are first, 1 minute and a half.
Thank you very much. Well, as far as this future, the future that we're talking about, I'm an advocate of creating new economy jobs. What are new economy jobs? New economy jobs are high-tech, biotech, and medical research. But we have an education gap here in the city of Oxnard. We don't have enough younger people that are going on to higher education. So not only do we have to work on schools, and I will say, as the mayor, as a teacher, that I have promoted magnet schools. Magnet schools, ladies and gentlemen, not only are they turning out the brightest students, but magnet schools will attract more people to this city. They're going to turn around and create more middle-class jobs. The first magnet school on the Oxnard Plain is about to be built, or is being built right now at River Park. It's going to be the first magnet school, a science, technology, engineering, arts, and math school. So when we talk about the future, I see the future as very bright, and I see it specifically in the area of new economy jobs. And that infrastructure to attract those new economy employers is already here with the intelligent traffic system. We have an underground network right now to provide that fiber optic cable that will eventually provide the highest speed internet anywhere in the county of Ventura. And I'm looking forward to carrying that out. If I had that $1 million, that's where I'd invest the money.
Okay, thank you. Mario, same question to you. What are your top priorities? How would you address them? Maybe your strengths and also what you would do with $1 million.
Well, my top priority is community reform. I think when you talk about community, you got to think about what connects us as a community, what brings us all together. I've continuously done this work, and sometimes it's dealing with the negative stuff, sometimes it's dealing with the hard issues. But that's how you engage those who have continuously lived in the shadows, you know. And so that would be one of my biggest focus, community reform. I think when you talk about a neighborhood councils, and they're on the rise, there's some great work going on there. The idea is how do you engage more people? How do you get them involved? For me, you know, I serve on this commission with community relations, and the idea is responsiveness. If you can come together and talk about all the ideas you want, but if you never get responded to or nobody ever follows up with you, what's the purpose? Eventually you give up and walk away. And under this leadership, that's what a lot of people have gone through. They feel like they're talking to a brick wall. I've been on this commission for 5 years now, and you know, I've never really felt like it's gone anywhere out of our commission. And we'll pass a resolution. It never gets to city council. We'll pass a yearly report. It doesn't go to city council. I don't know whether or not they just don't want to deal with us, or you know what can you get out of really not responding to people that are trying to do the work of creating what is called community. So that would be one of my biggest priorities, is community reform, truly responding to people in our community and engaging. If I had $1 million, I would build the sports park on the corner of Gonzales and Oxnard Boulevard with lights.
Thank you, Mario. And Aaron, we'll wrap up this question with you. Want me to read again?
Sure.
So, top priorities, if you were elected, top 2 strengths that you believe you have over the other candidates, and if you had $1 million to spend at your discretion for the city, what would you do? What would you spend it on?
Well, one advantage I have over the mayor is that I don't announce another initiative at the end of each election. He's been on the city council since 2004, and he just doesn't perform. He comes up with great speeches about how he wants to bring in this new initiative, and this time it's the fiber city. We need to fix our darn roads. I mean, the mayor talks about how we're going to do 100 lane miles, but you know what? That's less than 10% of all the roads in this city. You don't get to fix the roads more than once every 10 years that way. You need to do it more often than that. Our crime rate needs to be addressed. The mayor voted to lay off 16 police officers. That's just the wrong priorities. If we want to have better roads, if you want to have more of a crime, less crime in the city, you need to bring in the business community. You need to bring in businesses so that we can afford to pay for these services. They're paying the bills. They bring in the property taxes, the sales taxes, the business taxes that make it all possible. That's why other cities can provide these services without an extra half-cent sales tax. And somehow here we are paying an extra half-cent sales tax for the last 10 years, and we don't get the services these other cities have. You deserve more for your money. Let businesses come here. I can help bring businesses here to do that.
Thank you. Okay, I'm sorry, audience, I just don't have enough time to get in more questions. I will save some of these for the City Council. We're going to begin closing statements, but candidates, the questions are so good. I want to give you an idea of what's on the people's mind here tonight. I'll just read a few of these. There were questions about traffic, mitigating traffic. Others about how to increase the budget, what type of funding ideas you might have. One was about if you have family members or close friends who do not look like you, such as black or white, Asian, disabled, LGBTQ. Some of your thoughts about coexisting with many cultures that are making Oxnard such a great city. Other questions about public works, the firefighter department, some of those. Again, I'm sorry I couldn't get them in, they're terrific, but we do have to end on time. So we are going to start our closing statements in the reverse order. Aaron Starr will be first, 1.5 minutes.
Thank you again for hosting this event. The League of Women Voters does great work for this community, always has. And thank you again, all of you, for just caring enough about Oxnard to be here today. Very few people are as involved as you are, so thank you for being here. Hopefully by now you can see who can bring you the future you deserve. You have before you starkly different people. With me, here's what you can expect. Someone who listens, someone who understands that all of us together are smarter than any one of us alone. Someone who brings people together and seeks a middle ground. Someone who won't tell one audience one thing and tell another audience the opposite. Someone whose words matches his deeds. Someone who will bring experience managing teams. Someone who will look to the long term. Someone who is fiscally prudent. Someone who will give you the good news and not hide the bad news. Someone who will focus on the future, not just blame the past. Someone who can see the big picture and can also dive into the details. Someone who is not a showman or a former used car salesman or there just to hear himself talk. Someone whose promises result in actions. Yes, the incumbent and I are very different people. And if I should be so honored as to earn your support for mayor, you can count that I will be your biggest champion. Oxnard, let's build a future together. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next candidate is Mario Quintana.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak tonight. I want to thank everyone for being here. Like I said, I've grown up here my entire life. I've proven commitment to this community. I've proven honesty and integrity. I think my work on the Community Relations Commission has been truthful, has been honest, has been real work. That's hard and at times controversial, but I feel a good leader always is willing to stand to deal with the difficult issues, willing to stand up and work towards progress with everyone, and commit to those that you don't often hear, don't often see here in our community, because those individuals that are living in the shadows, they're part of the solution, and we're going to move forward, and we have to all do it together. So I think that's something that I represent. I want to make sure that we engage the public appropriately and properly. That's why I've continuously done this kind of work. Like I said, I've been on the commission for 5 years. I'm currently a Little League president in La Colonia. Like I said, I never left. I grew up there, and I'm going to continue to go back because I feel you have to be part of the solution. If you're going to talk the talk, you need to walk the walk. And so that's why, I put my hat in this race. And you can look at me and say, I'm the underdog or even a spoiler. But I can tell you this, that I've been committed from day one to do right by my community. I'm committed to this city 100%, and I'll never shy away from controversial issues. I'll stand with you, I'll stand by you, I'll fight for you. Thank you.
Thank you. And our last candidate is Tim Flynn.
Thank you very much. I want to thank the league once again and those listening to this debate. I think it's been really healthy that we've been able to exchange these ideas. I have committed my life to public service. And prior to entering public service, I was in the private sector. And yes, I was in sales. So I had a bottom line each day. So when it really comes down to getting results, ladies and gentlemen, it's not about election time gimmicks. It's not about promises to the public. The bottom line is I would not have been reelected if all of the promises that I've made have not come to anything. The bottom line is for you as members of the public that have to make a choice in November, who has the experience? Do either one of these men have the experience to lead this city? We're still not out of the weeds yet. We're still not out of the financial difficulties that we've uncovered from decades of fiscal mismanagement here in the city of Oxnard. I am a uniter. I don't sue people and cost them millions of dollars of lawsuits. I don't put on special elections at the cost of $500,000 to the taxpayer. And I bring people together. I have a proven record of bringing people together. And when we talk about the big picture is progress. The big picture is not a lawsuit.
Thank you. I ask the candidates to please remain seated, but how about a round of applause for these candidates? At the League, we cannot put on a forum like this without the support and help of all of our volunteers. You met Betsy earlier. She was our timer. Doris and Cheryl were over here doing the sorting. You met Suki, Pat Butler on the outside, and Carol Lindbergh helping at the membership desk. Krista, Kendall, Mulaney, Pat Essick, and myself, David Marin. Thank you all very much. Thank you to KDY TV and the city for televising this as well. We're going to be right back about 5 minutes with our city council forum. Thank you.